We're live.
Kicking us off. Go ahead, man.
What's up? Oh, I was like, where am I? I'm like going to tell you. Hey. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Mapping It Out with me and Ryan Williams. This is our 12th podcast.
That's right.
We're going strong.
We're like official podcasters now.
I know. I love it.
Where do we get the groupies?
I know, right? Where are they?
Just kidding. I married mine.
And today I wanted to go over the topic of partnership with Ryan. I have a couple thoughts of with my business of what I want to do. I have a good buddy that known for a long time, and he's very talented on business sides, right? And me and him always wanted to start a business together, right? So with the business I have, we're looking on maybe him joining on board with that, or maybe just starting something completely different too, like a side thing. But like I said, he's like a really good friend of mine, one of my best friends. And I came to you first and wanted to know, like, what do you think when it comes to partnerships, friends, family? Like,
dude, it can be the best thing or the worst thing. But it's like, well, humans are the hardest part about business, and a partnership is with another human. So you've automatically got like it like a marriage. It can be the strongest thing. It can really help you accelerate your growth and be the foundation of a great life, or it can be what makes your life totally fucking miserable. But I think there are some key considerations. I was just talking with after you and I spoke about that last week. I had a conversation yesterday with another friend of mine who's got some really interesting partnership opportunities, some really high level people, and it was cool to see the differences and highlight like the conversation and the things that you're looking for from your partnership and things that he's looking for from his partnership are the same in a lot of ways, but the conversations are slightly different. So I think we'll go over some of the basics. And then once we're through those, I think it's important to go over some like the higher level considerations of like, planning out 10 years, 15 years, like kind of like not just a business partnership, but like a life partnership and people you want to do business with for, people you want to build your life with.
Yeah.
Because after a certain point, like money's money, money's great. But after you've like all these guys making 8 and 9 figures, like money's great, but more important than that is who you spend your time with. So you want to make sure that you're crafting partnerships that are, winning all around. Like both parties feel comfortable and are getting what they need and building a life together, essentially. So there's different levels to it. But I think the first thing is really just alignment, which sounds easy, but you got to ask some difficult questions. And within those questions are specifically a few things. Number one, what type of business do you want to build? But also, how much bandwidth do you have to contribute to it? Because some people will want to contribute monetarily, but they don't have the bandwidth for time to contribute. And some people don't have money, but they have a lot of energy and time, and they can contribute that. So you guys got to figure out like where you want to go, and then what you're both willing to bring to the table. And as far as roles and responsibilities, when you're in the beginning stages, like when Mike and I were first starting Forged, this was our first business. We didn't know shit about shit. So we're in the lawyer's office, like getting it set up. And it's like, oh, who wants to be president and vice president? We had never asked ourselves that. We literally flipped a coin in the lawyer's office, like, okay, Mike's president, I'm vice president. And we're like, what do we do?
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
Yeah.
So
Baxter, who's Mike?
Oh, sorry, Mike Sowers, the guy who started Forged Clothing with.
Okay, so who is he? Like, was he like a good buddy that you? Best
he
friend?
was like my best friend at the time. We were roommates for years and years and years, like really close friends. We worked together, like it was good. We had no idea how to set up the roles and responsibilities because we didn't know what the roles and responsibilities were, and further, we didn't know what we were going to be good at and what we were going to be bad at. So we kind of set it up, and it worked great for a couple years. And then we ended up having too much overlap in a few of those things, and we ended up stepping on each other's toes, and it caused some conflict in the relationship. And then I ended up exiting that business for a variety of reasons, but that wasn't a small part of it. No fault of Mike. It was equally I was equally an asshole in that situation. Sometimes things just blow up, I still love Mike. He's a great dude. But it's important to consider the roles and responsibilities. And if you look at it like a Venn diagram, like two circles, you want to have a slight overlap of things that you're both good at. So you can understand, have communication, but it's usually one person is good on the creative side where they're like, go to the branding and the brand identity and the design and the aesthetics of it. And the other person is usually better suited to be more on the technical side, like the infrastructure, the operations, the systems and processes. And if you have those two things, if one person is strong in the creative area and one person is strong in the infrastructure area, the package they can bring together to the business can be very powerful.
Yeah.
But if you're both like really good at branding and really good on the creative side, and you don't really have anybody that's going to be able to run payroll or be able to articulate your taxes correctly or anything like that, like you're going to end up, it's a problem because you're not good at the things that you need to be good at to round out a business, and you guys are going to totally step on each other's toes in the parts that you both want control over. So the parts that, the best way to frame it, I think, in my experience, is the roles and responsibilities that you guys put together. You decide who's in charge of what. So you guys both have conversations about every piece of the business, every part of that Venn diagram, every part of everybody else's roles and responsibilities. You can have input, you can have conversations about it, but at the end of the day, one person needs to be in charge of what you're doing, and their decision needs to be final. And it's usually not a point of contention with the things that are in the opposite sides of the roles, but it's the overlap where you both have different ideas, but you both have really good experience with it. That's where the best solution is come to a communication and be like, okay, I want to do this thing. I want to go left. You want to go right. We know we both want to go the same direction. So what am I missing in that equation that I haven't heard yet? And maybe we'll go your way. Or maybe I haven't articulated the reasons why I think my direction is best. And let's have a conversation. I can show you that. And if both people are open to it, you'll usually gather all the information and then be able to move forward in a way that makes sense. But that's a very mature way to do it. And I have not always been a mature fucking individual. Probably still am not. So ideally, that's the way to set it up. But when you're first starting out, honestly, you probably don't even know what your strengths and weaknesses are. I know I didn't. I didn't figure it out for, probably about 4 or 5 years.
Because like me and him, I'm the creative, right? Like when we used to work together, but he just saw the creativeness, like the creating, how I create video content, right? The whole editing and all that kind of stuff. He's like, you really know how to tell a story through a camera and through editing, music, all this kind of stuff. I want to be able to do that, but this is what he can offer. And he's really good on the business aspect of it all, right? Because that's what I'm doing right now, where I'm focusing on the more creative side for like my content agency, right? For my other clients. But it's like, if I focused on that whole side of just creating really good content for these clients to get them more views or more just potential clients, right? To come be customers. He could just focus on the whole logistics side where it's like, okay, now I just have to focus on being the best, creating the best messages for clients, creating all this kind of branding things around them.
So does he already have a company you guys would be combining, or is he coming onto your company?
So me and him like kind of started it a long time ago. We already kind of built something on the side, right? So me and him were working on that, and then things kind of, COVID happened, right? So we had to kind of pick up like our own things of what we were doing.
Is this an existing business structure that's separate?
With me and him?
Yeah, like when you say you already set it up, is it already
existing? No, it was just like napkin on paper. It was like nothing crazy, like nothing like legit.
So the idea, but it's not like an actual like LLC.
Yeah, it was just me and him chilling in the house, just talking about certain things. Like, he would find me artists to go film.
Dude, that's such a fun part of the partnership. Is like sitting around with beers. Like, dude, what are we gonna do? Let's map it out.
Yeah,
like, that is so much fun.
It was in North Park, and it was just, he's like, hey man, I got you a music video client. Oh, sick, dope.
Yeah.
All right, here, we're going to go meet on this day, blah, 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 go shoot, cool. So it was kind of just that. He would like talk to people, network and all that kind of stuff. Then I would work. And then he just super dope dude. And he has a lot of connections in that space. So it's kind of just like, I don't know, yin and yang. Me and him work really well together. We do butt heads, but it's just like, we know like when to back off, but that's why I was more interested in the whole, you have to choose who's going to be like the CEO or like vice president, you know what I mean? Like, and that's like a weird thing to talk about. Like, who owns it more, or whatever, you know. But it's just,
well, the role is different than the ownership percentage too, because you can have somebody who's not even an officer in the company, meaning an executive with a title, but they still can own whatever percentage of the company and just not be an officer within it. So that's the great thing about it too. You can kind of structure it any way you want. It just has to be an agreement between you and the other person. And that's why I think it's the best bet is to focus on, just have a conversation like you do about, like, you know, over drinks and have fun and talk about the fun stuff. But also, okay, this project that we're going to do, this is going to require this much of my time, right? You as the operator, this is going to require, say, 8 hours of my time. And if he's not really able to spend 8 hours on that, like, did he spend 8 hours getting that connection and that client for you? Because if he's getting 50% of the revenue from it, the expectations are 50% of work. And that's a huge point of contention with partnerships, is one person feels like they're doing more work. And if the compensation structure isn't aligned with that, and you both don't feel like you're being paid appropriately, it can really start to be a drain. And that has to do with, like, the percentage of ownership in the company.
I think, like you said, where it's just like, sit down at the table, just map everything out of exactly what the business is, who's going to take care of what and when. And then, like you say, because you did it with Mike, you did it with Disney, like you still do it with Disney, where it's like, she's CEO, she'll make a call. And then it's like, no, babe, like I'm the founder, like this is what we got to do. Like, and it's kind of, you guys kind of go at it, right? But it's like, you are going to call the main shot, right? She calls great shots when they're needed, but maybe explain that too, because that's another thing.
So technically, I'm the president and founder, which is on paper underneath the CEO.
Okay, yeah.
But I'm also the owner, which is above the CEO. So when I'm telling her what to do, it's not as a president founder thing. It's as the owner, like, hey, this is what I say needs to happen, because I'm the owner. Yeah. And so the owner is above the CEO, but I'm 100% owner of that company. I mean, obviously Disney's my wife, so technically it's like, 50-50. Exactly. But technically on paper, that's the way it's structured. But I try not to have those dictator style conversations, because there's very few times where I've had to do that, because Disney's really good. And usually she has really good arguments for why she believes what she believes and wants to do what she wants to do. But there's only a few times where I have to be like, look, like, this is the long-term vision. I know in the short term what you're saying is correct and right, but we're going this fucking way. We're going this direction. This is what we have to do. But if it were like 50-50, who gets to make that call? And that's why I think it's so important to outline in the beginning those overlapping responsibilities. You can have a conversation about it, but at the end of the day, somebody's got to be able to make that call, like, hey, we're doing this. And the other person's got to be like, hey, I don't agree with that, but we're in the same boat. I know we want the same things long term, so I'm going to go with it. Because if you just fight about everything, like, dude, you're not going to go anywhere, and that's no fun. It sucks.
Dude, I know. And that's like the one thing I do worry about. It's like my best friend, brother. If that like fucked everything up, you'd be like, that sucks. It's just like, damn, shouldn't have done business. But I don't think that way too much. It's just one of those things where there's repercussions to everything if something does go wrong. So I always think about it. But it's just me and him. I'm like, that's why I see it. Like that diagram that you showed me last week. If it's too overlapping, the creator, right? And you guys are both creators, there's not a lot on the outside of like what you guys can do. So if it's more that's less shaded in the middle, and everyone has a more understanding of like what they can bring to the table, that's when it's like, oh, cool. And then that is definitely like me and him.
Yeah, and having a partner, man. I mean, I don't hang out with Mike these days, but that's not because I don't want to. That's just some personal stuff that Mike has on his own plate. But yeah, we were like best friends for a long time, roommates, like it was like forever. And they say like, don't get into business with your friends, but I don't think that wasn't the issue with us. It was overlapping responsibilities and then not having quality conversations about, the conflict that came up. It's like now, I think if I was dealing with the same thing, I don't think we'd have those same problems, because I know how to articulate what the problems are. And I have more experience with developing solutions and maybe a little less ego now. So I'd probably be a much better partner now.
Why do you think, but like you in the business world, you hear that, like, don't be in business with your friends?
It typically comes down, the reason that most partnerships blow up is incongruency in the perception of compensation. And it has to do with, like, for instance, what happened with me and Mike. I felt like I was doing most of the work, and I started to resent him. And I'm sure he felt the same way. He probably felt like he was doing most of the work and started to resent me. But that was the basis of it, is we basically wanted to kind of take the company in two different directions, but we hadn't really articulated who had control over what. So we were butting heads on it. But in reality, like, we both wanted the same thing. We just didn't know how to talk to each other about it, you know? And we're both probably equally right and wrong.
Has every business you started like been with a partner, like a friend or anything like that?
No, that was the only one.
Oh,
every other one I've only had just myself in it. And honestly, it's awesome to have a partner, dude. Like, it can create some conflict and drama sometimes. But dude, there's nothing like tackling a big obstacle with somebody that has the same vision as you. And just like, you know, when you're up night and you're like, dude, it's midnight and you got this idea. And dude, if you can have some, especially when they're your roommate, like Mike was, we're like, bro, I got this idea. Get the fuck up. We're gonna have some drinks. We're gonna talk about this whole thing, right? And you have this groundbreaking idea in like an hour. And like, I still do that. Like, Disney and I just had a conversation 2 nights ago at like 10 p.m. that completely changed the next 5 years of our business.
Hell yeah.
And she's not, I mean, I guess technically she is my partner in that. But we operate like partners, even though technically we're not partners. But she's my person now that I bounce ideas off of and you know, supports me in what I do. But without that, dude, it's really, business is a lot of work, man. Yeah. And if you don't have somebody by your side, whether that's a spouse or a partner or somebody who's wants to do it with you, dude, it's really hard to push yourself hard enough and long enough to build a business to the point where it's sustainable.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah. And I think that's where I'm at right now too. Cause it's just like, I love doing what I'm doing on my own, but sometimes when it's like, you do have those off days, who's picking you up? Like, seriously, like who's like, you'll pick yourself up. You gotta listen to some things, or just take a day, you know, go like be around your friends and kind of just like, oh, everything's good, man. But when you have that partner, when you're down and they're like, dude, like, we're good, dude, you match their energy, you know. I think it'd be dangerous when both of them just have the same energy every single time, you know. But usually it's just having that pickup where it's just, you have someone when you're down, they got your back, and then they just remind you, dude, we're on the right track. We're still going, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and to be honest, like I miss having, I mean, I love the support that my wife gives me and we have together, but I miss having another person involved in the business where I can, you know, all the challenges that come up and be like, it's sometimes nice just to have a person be like, what the fuck, bro? What the fuck is going on here? Like, let's fix this. This is a huge problem. And to share the wins with, you know, just from a human perspective, it's humans are better going through difficult things with other humans. That's just human nature. And I miss that sometimes. Like, I would love to have a partner in some aspects of the businesses that I do now. But dude, it's so hard to find the right people because, and maybe I'm a little gun shy about it because I know like what can go wrong.
Yeah, right.
So I'm like, a little odd. And I've tried to bring other people on to like some of the side brands I've had. I've tried to bring people on like, oh, you'll, you know, run this and we'll have a, you know, vesting percentage of ownership in this until we get to this point. And then you'll own like whatever, 40%, and then we'll sell it and you'll be this. And you know, maybe I bet on the wrong horse, I guess, or I bet on the wrong jockey. Cause it never worked out for me. But I don't know, maybe I'm just not a good judge of people. So on agreement. So everything should be, when you're hashing all this out with your partner, potential partner, super important to ask them all these questions and like alignment, roles and responsibilities, everything we talked about. But you got to put it down on paper. And people think, oh, it's got to be in legalese. No, it really doesn't. Like, even in Texas, if you have a verbal agreement, it will hold up in court as long as somebody else has witnessed it. But you can legally have a verbal agreement in Texas, like a handshake deal, held up as a written agreement. And a lot of people don't realize that. I think, well, I never signed the paper. Like, yeah, but if you have an agreement, so say you even email somebody and you're like, hey, I'm going to do this, you do this is the expectation and compensation, and you just kind of put everything down on paper, even though it's just email. That's the start. Now, if you operate by that agreement, like, okay, I do my part, you do your part, that's them accepting the terms of the agreement. So that is an enforceable agreement, even though it's not written down on paper. And you can have something written out and you say you sign it and you send it to them and they don't even sign it, but they operate as if they're doing the agreement. That's an enforceable agreement. So just because you don't sign something doesn't mean you're not on the hook legally. But that's a lot of people don't understand that. They think, well, I never signed it. I never did this. Like,
it don't matter.
yeah, it doesn't really work like that.
Was that just specifically Texas?
No, California too.
Oh, nice.
Like you can have it's a verbal agreement. I think. I know it is for Texas. I had to look it up.
Kind of just like a handshake agreement.
Yeah,
that's just how it is.
Yeah, I think it has to be witnessed by other people. But now, I mean, just throwing down like things in email, having a email conversation that you can print out, like that's not ideal, obviously, but man, that's way better than just nothing. Mm-hmm. And then if you do want to do like, have an attorney or LegalZoom go print up an operating agreement and just outline that. Now you at least have something that there's no surprises. When you take that to an attorney, they'll be like, okay, I'm going to build this out. They're not going to bring up some other questions you guys didn't ask. And you're like, well, fuck, who's going to do this? What's the percentage of ownership? All that. Because you've already hashed it all out.
Yeah. I want to talk like the downfalls, because I know you've been there with a fallout. What happens to the company? Like, what happens to it? Or it's just like, it gets interesting. You both sell it? Or I'm just curious.
Yeah, because you can't, it's not like a breakup. You're like, well, I'm getting my shit, I'm leaving. You're like, oh, no, you legally have a responsibility to, the state and federal for taxes and whatever the business is involved in and rent and everything else that you've signed as a legal entity. But also you have whatever partner wants to leave, the partner who's staying, you can't just be like, well, fuck you, I'm not paying you anymore. You have to give them their percentage of payment regardless of whether they're doing anything or not. And that's why it's so important to put things in like, hey, this is the expected work that you're going to be doing and the roles and responsibilities. So then if they stop doing those roles and responsibilities, then if it does go to court or any kind of contention, you'd be like, look, man, like the reason that you're not entitled to this pay anymore is because you're not doing the fucking job anymore. Yeah. But if you don't put that down in the beginning, it gets kind of tough. Oh, one thing I should mention while it's in my head is that you should also figure out and establish and agree on a way to value the business. So if you do ever want to exit it, you have an agreed upon valuation, not a valuation number, but a way to value the company. Because what happens is one person wants to leave and say it's 50-50 ownership. One person wants to buy out another person. One person will be like, well, I want to buy you out and the company is worth $50,000. So I'm going to give you $25,000 for your half. The other person can value that same company at $500,000 and be like, no, I'm not selling for less than $250,000. And both are, both are valid. The valuation of the company can be completely like even more different than that. So that's why I think it's important that you both agree on a way to value the company so that you can both be like, hey, look, this is what we agreed on in the beginning, 4 or 5 years later, this is in the operating agreement. This is legally what we're going to abide by. If you don't have that set up, which most people don't, because it's kind of like you don't really learn that lesson until you get kicked in the face a few times. Yeah. So you guys listen to the podcast are already ahead. You're way ahead. What was I going to say?
It's the when you guys don't make that agreement in the beginning.
Oh yeah, the other ways. Yeah. So if you can't agree on a sum, what'll happen? I forget the term for it, but basically you can just roll up the company and then basically sell it on the courthouse steps. So anybody can go in and buy it and whatever. That's kind of a fucking huge gamble and Russian roulette, and it is an option. It's not really a good option. There's also something called a shotgun clause, which is interesting and a little bit. It can be dangerous because if one person wants to buy another person, it depends on the intention of the other person. So you have a shotgun clause where somebody says, okay, companies, I think your half of the company is worth $200,000, shotgun clause, I'm giving you $200,000. They then have the option to buy you out for that same amount. Oh. So it's kind of like you have it's supposed to be a way to make it more fair. It's kind of like when you slice a pie, and I remember a little brother and sister, like mom would slice the pie and be like, well, I want the bigger one, and you're like, it's like a gram bigger, and you're like, it's mine. Yeah. But if you let one of the kids slice the pie and the other one gets to choose which slice they want, dude, that kid's going to be like, oh, it's on the fucking line. There's one more piece of frosting on this one. They're going to make sure it's fucking exact. Yeah. So that's kind of the intent of that. But any way you do it, there's no clean way to do it. It's always a fucking mess if you don't have this stuff in place first. That's why I think that the two main important things are, number one, have as much as you can set out ahead of time. And not that you want it to happen, but think about, okay, if we do exit the company or one of us wants to, how are we going to value the company? That one thing right there will eliminate 80 to 90% of the contention, the problems that, that can potentially come up. And the other thing is, man, just be open and have a conversation about it and drop your ego and be like, look, man, like here's what I want out of the business and life. What do you want out of the business and life? What's the common ground? And maybe the best thing is for somebody to exit the company and go build and do something else. That's what I did. And I'm super happy like with everything that I've done. I would have changed maybe parts of how I handled the relationship part. But as far as the businesses that I built and the stuff that I've done after, I love doing that. I love building and building and building. I'm not really interested in like running things. I like building things. So for me, exiting that and then gaining experience and growing and building more things, that's what I love to do. So that was good. I don't have any regrets on that. But yeah, I definitely could have been better with the communication aspect of it for sure.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mike. Love you, bro.
So another question I had is, let's just say you have a company that's making like 10 mil a year, right? Profit margins aren't so great, but like the value of the company is like,
sounds exactly like my company.
It's just someone wants to leave now. You don't probably have that value in the bank right away. So it's like cash. It's like, do you go to the bank and how's that work? Loans?
Right. Yeah. Well, let's just take my company example, because that's exactly what it is. We'll probably do around 10 million this year and very, very low profit margin. We're manufacturing, so all manufacturers have very low profit margin. So with that, it has to do with how you value a company, and different categories of companies are valued in different ways. So like tech companies are sometimes valued at like 10 times their total revenue, right? So in that case, 10 times 10 million be $100 million valuation. So if I had a 50% partner want to buy them out, it cost me $50 million, right? Which is like ridiculous. But these tech companies are like that. It's a totally different thing. If your company has a recurring revenue model, like a subscription model or something like that, that can increase the multiple from like, maybe a 4 or 5 by multiple to like a 7 or 10 by multiple. So that could be the difference between like a $40 to $50 million valuation versus a $70 or $80 million valuation or $100 million valuation. So there's certain things that you can do within the company to increase the multiple, but really that multiple is either a extension of the top line revenue, which is like gross sales, but that's usually only for like tech companies and stuff like that, because there's so much overhead that goes into anything like with a brick and mortar. Like we have a lot of infrastructure, so there's a lot of overhead in our business. So with that, it usually goes by EBITDA, which is earnings before taxes, interest, whatever. It's basically what you and I would consider profit. Like if I wasn't spending on, what I could pull out of the company as an owner, that's kind of the EBITDA, right? So let's say that's 5%. So let's say that's $500,000. So now we have 5% of 10 million. Now that's the EBITDA. And now we have a multiple of that. Now we have to decide, what type of company am I? Am I actually a manufacturer? Am I a broker? Am I a print company? Am I a retail? Because all these have slightly different valuation models. And once you agree on something, let's say it's like, 4, like, okay, now that's 500,000 times 4, $2 million valuation. Now, if I wanted to buy out, if I had a 50% partner, wanted to buy them out, I got to come up with $1 million. But buyouts are not usually cash buyouts. Oh, that's the other thing I wanted to put into the last podcast we did about valuation. Yeah, most buyouts are not cash. Most buyouts are.
You always feel that way though. Like when someone buys them, like, oh fuck yeah. Like,
yeah, I mean, like, all my were, but that's because they weren't like, $1 million exits. Yeah, but most big buyouts are usually not cash. They'll be like, say you have a $2 million valuation, I have to come up with $1 million. It'd be like $200,000 cash, and then you get $200,000 a year for the next 4 years. Something like that. So that would be pretty common. And also that would be a vested $200,000. So that if I wanted to buy out a partner, $200,000 up front, and first year, Like, okay, if he doesn't talk shit about the company and doesn't try to sabotage it or sink it, you get the $200,000. If he's still staying on board, like say I buy him out, but he's still a really good operator, and he doesn't want the stress of the company, but he's really good in a role and he wants to be an employee. That's great. So now I pay him $200,000 a year plus his salary. But also that $200,000 that I'm supposed to give him that year is contingent on him still doing a good job in his role.
Oh, yeah.
So you have vesting strategies where like, and maybe you'll get like $50,000 the first year and $500,000 last year. So you can kind of spread it out any way you want.
Okay. Yeah.
But usually it's not cash, especially the higher dollar amounts. It's not cash. 5 and 6 figures. You can usually find people that have cash, or they can go to a bank and get a loan for cash. But 7 figures, it's usually like some combination of small amount of cash plus some kind of vesting strategy.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's funny. You always think just like, oh,
I know,
here's
right?
a fat check.
Yeah,
like, yeah. Let's go.
We go Scrooge McDuck, just cash it and roll in the dough.
Yeah, man.
So those are kind of outlining the basics. I think some of the higher level stuff though is like once you have a resume of building and scaling and exiting companies, now you're in kind of a different level to where you're going to be around other people who have done that too. And now you're in like a serial entrepreneur level. And a lot of those guys, like once you make enough money, and I'm not there yet. I'm just like imagining how, some of these other guys who have like, 8 and 9 and 10 figure companies, how they would view the world. I imagine it's probably something like once you have enough money to do whatever you want, it's who do you want to do that with?
Yeah.
Like, I can go, on a $500,000 yacht or a $50 million yacht for a week and cost $500,000, and that's nothing for you. That's awesome. Who the fuck you want to be on the yacht with?
Yeah.
Some assholes, some yahoos, some fucking TikTok hoes, like, like
TikTok hoes.
Right. But I mean, like who do you want to spend your time with? And that becomes more important. So at the higher levels, what I'm seeing is that these guys are more interested in creating win-win deals and not, trying to suck every little drop out of profit and like, fuck the other person. I'm going to maximize my profits. Like, dude, I want to create something where you win, I win, we both win long-term, and we go on fucking vacations together with our families and we spend time and we like live our lives together. But I think that only comes once you get past that point of like, oh my God, I fucking need to pay rent, and then you can start to think about other things. But in the beginning, dude, just trying to make payroll, like sometimes that's the main goal.
It's a little off topic, but you said something that made me just kind of curious. What happens when like someone creates a $50 million company, right? Mm-hmm. They still want to stay within the company, but they just don't want to work as much, but they're still like part owner.
Like Steve Wozniak.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So how does that work? Where they're just like, oh,
well, he gave away all his money.
Oh,
yeah.
But it's more like, or maybe some people just stay within the company.
Well, you have the option, right? So that's kind of what Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak did with Apple. Jobs was more of the branding and marketing and creative in that way, and Wozniak was the technician and the engineer, really, and the programmer that fulfilled all the promises that Jobs made. He made these things that didn't exist and he created them into reality. And that's what he loved doing. He didn't like being like the boss. He didn't like telling people what to do. He's just a very like hardcore engineer. And so for him, once Apple started picking up, he didn't want the spotlight. He didn't want to be in charge of anybody. He just wanted to do the work. So they carved him off a little corner and project, and he would just work on whatever projects he wanted. And he had a great time doing that. So you can kind of do it any way you want. I forget the exact partnership. I think it was 50-50 or maybe it's something like that. But I think he and Jobs were about the same. But interestingly enough, Wozniak ended up giving away most of his percentage to other people within the company. And that's why he gave away almost everything, which is, probably a little too good Samaritan-ish. But I mean, the guy loves his work. I mean, he's a true artisan.
Wow.
Like to him, like the money's great, but to him, the work is what he loves. And you'll have partners like that. Like But that's why I think it's so important to just have a conversation with them and be like, dude, what do you want out of the company? Like, what do you want out of life? And how can we leverage the company to give you that? And then you say, this is what I want in life. How can we leverage the company to give me that? And through those conversations, you can usually craft something that's beneficial but there's usually a way to craft it where it's good for both people. It's just that most people won't drop their egos enough to actually have those conversations.
That's a huge takeaway. What you said in the whole beginning, where it's just like, you just have to plan it out.
Yeah.
Because I know it's like, we have everything to make a really successful company that me and him always think big. Always big, but we have the drive to do it, you know, like I've been doing it and he's been doing it too. And it's just kind of like, all right, let's just go together now and just really push it. But knowing like, that's what sometimes I get afraid of, where it's going to be a more content driven business where it's like, okay, I'm doing a lot. Like, what's your end like, you know, but having it just mapped out where it's just like, you just know, this is what he's doing. This is what I'm doing. I can still check. Like, that's another thing. Do you check up on that person? It's like,
what they're doing?
Yeah.
Well, usually partnerships, you're so, especially a startup, you're so like elbow to elbow with it.
Yeah.
That if they're not doing it, you just look over and you're like, what the fuck are you doing?
Quit playing with your dinghy.
Unless you're OnlyFans and keep playing with your dinghy.
Exactly.
I film you play with your dinghy. Great partnership.
Big bank, man.
Yeah. So on that, in that particular instance, because you already have an existing company that's doing six figures, what I would suggest is not having him come on board with your company. Because if you say, give him, let's say 50% of your company and it doesn't work out, he now owns 50% of whatever you've built, right? So the other way to do that is he can buy into it, whatever, but it just makes it complicated. What I would suggest in the situation is you guys create a separate company, and LLC is just a real easy format for that. And then you guys both, whatever percentage of ownership you guys, feel is fair to each other. And then that will be the company that you guys have together. And then if it works out that that's your primary focus and the company they have now, you want to either make a subsidiary of that, or maybe that's your company that you get paid through for tax purposes. Like there's a lot of benefits to doing that. There's not a lot of benefits to giving him percentage of what you already have built. Yeah, I'd really suggest starting something fresh.
Okay.
Yeah. And Same thing with him too. I wouldn't suggest he give you percentage of ownership, whatever he's built so far.
Yeah.
Like build something fresh together, because it really is a new concept, new idea. And if it takes over what you're currently doing, then you can just dissolve the company and move everything into the main company. That's easy to do too.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, where it's like part of the idea of what I'm doing in the company now, my company, is like we might do something like that in the new one. So it's kind of like merging later. It's just kind of like, do you just start something new, or is like when you have like,
I don't know if you guys can hear that, but there's fucking unscheduled,
Are they on the roof?
unscheduled construction on our roof. Yeah.
I was gonna say, because I thought it was like some of the employees. I don't see them. But I think it's just two businesses that are kind of the same, right? Same industry, same niche. It's kind of like, how do you bring those clients onto this one compared to like on the other one? It's
like that overlap thing. Like you guys just kind of got to decide ahead of time, if you're bringing clients on from the combo company, and maybe the best bet is to bring the clients on through the combo company. And then if it's a specific service that is best serviced by your side company, maybe your side company is a contractor to the main company.
Yeah.
So that's one way to do it, to keep it clean. Or maybe that would make it more messy. I don't know. But that's a conversation you guys got to have and figure out like what makes sense for both of you guys. Because you guys both have to be okay with it. Because if one person's like, I don't know, man, that I don't know is going to turn to fuck you like real quick.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think just starting fresh too, where it's like, all right, we make nothing. Like, like whatever this is, it's like we're putting back into that. Yeah. Because I get nervous about like, I have a 6-figure comp, which is awesome, but it's like, okay, it's on how much I want to feed that of mine into that, where it's like,
you guys got to determine what you want to pay yourselves too. Because I know for me, like I pay myself very little. Like what I pay myself as W-2 is $40,000, and Disney gets $30,000. That's our W-2. Now we live at a different level because most of the stuff that we do is a write-off because all we do is business. Like we don't have any other hobbies or interests. And every time we go out to dinner, it's with other entrepreneurs and clients and everything. So we're able to live at a certain level and not have to pay ourselves as much, but we do pay ourselves with an owner's draw, which helps save 7% payroll tax. So there's all kinds of little ways you can save, but I try to pay myself honestly as little as possible. But if I had a partner, that would be different. And that's one of the reasons I like running the company with no partners is that I don't have to, like if my partner wants to take out like $100,000, I'm like, fuck, man, that means I got to take out $100,000. I got to pay taxes on $100,000. I'm like, dude, I don't want to do that. Like, and now you're in contention because now he's getting $100,000 and I'm not. But
wait, why would they? Just example, why would they take out $100,000
for whatever? Say he wants to buy a boat or something. You know,
so you would have to take it out to match evenly?
If we're 50-50 split, I would have to take the same compensation. And if I don't want that, now I got to fucking pay taxes on that.
Oh shit.
You know? But if I would rather roll that $100,000 into, you know, more equipment or a new warehouse or growing the company, now that's going to benefit him 50% in the long run. It's not fair for him to take out $100,000. And so I would, in that case, I would have to take out $100,000 just to keep the contention level down.
Interesting.
Because if I don't and I roll my $100,000 back into the company, I'm going to be pissed if he takes half of that later. Yeah. You know, there's just these little things that like snowball into.
And you don't
like,
think
problems.
about.
You don't think about
no,
it. Yeah. You're like, oh, that's for, go get the boat, dude. It'll be great. We'll have margaritas. Like, yeah, until you realize like,
yo, you took a shit down.
Yeah. And then he's like putting gas for the boat on a company card, like $1,600 for gas. What the fuck? Like, oh, right off. Like, for you, is it? I don't know, man. That's a lot of margaritas, bro.
Yeah, I love just talking about it because it's just putting it into perspective. If their business is a huge fucking game.
Yeah.
There's so many things that you can do. There's so many things like a lot of people like how you said like selling a business, like it's not usually a cash offer. Usually it's not. It's just not. So just like how that works. And the same thing is like, I didn't know like if they pulled $100,000 out, you got to pull $100,000 out or it's going to get contaminated with that.
Yeah.
And like you're going to lose shit. So it's just so many things that like I consistently learn. It's just like,
yeah, partnerships are great. You just have to plan things out. I look at business like there's multiple layers for everything. It's like quicksand. You can get so deep in all layers. But most people only look at the first layer, and that's why they have problems because they never think about the second and the third layer and the eighth layer. And you don't need to think about the 10th layer down or whatever, but even just having small conversations about the second and the third layer of that, like, okay, when we set up 50-50, how are we paying ourselves? That right there eliminates you guys having problems with like, oh, I want to take out $100,000 and having that issue and how do we pay taxes on it? How do we keep it equitable and fair? If you have that conversation first, but people don't, and that's why they get stuck in these like second and third level conversations because they didn't address those things in the first level conversation.
Quick question before you wrap up. So now I'm curious about payment. All right. So let's just say I have a service and charge $5,000, right? Hey man, we just got $5,000. Like we do our service and we're done. Dope. It's $5,000 in the bank account. Now what?
Yeah.
Do I get 25 and then he takes the 25 or we just leave it in there and just stack that motherfucker? Like, because that's what I'm curious about, like splitting.
Well, you got to figure out how much of that is profit too.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So say it costs you $50,000 to get the business to the point you both invested $25,000. Now you got $5,000. You didn't actually make $5,000. You're only 45 negative.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I had that problem with one of the one guy I tried to partner with. I was helping him build a brand. I'm like, dude, fine. I'll do all the stuff. I'll finance it. We'll do like part of our infrastructure. And I want 40% ownership, and then we can help you like crush it, right? And he was in a little bit of a crunch for money, which should have been my first red flag on it. But I was like, nah, he's a good dude. Like we're friends. Like it'll work, And I think we launched and we made like $1,800 or something like that. And I'd already spent like, I think $20,000 up to that point, like building like the website, the content creation, all the product, all the marketing photos, like everything was about 20. I was about $20,000 in personally on this. And we got that 1,800 and he's like, awesome, dude. Let's split it. I'm like, I got 1,000, you get 800. I'm like, bro, that's not actually profit. Like even the profit minus cost of goods, like, okay, maybe we made like 1,200, you know what I mean? But like, that's not we didn't actually make that. That goes back to paying off the 20 grand that I put into the company already. Once that's paid off, you know, and I told him it's probably gonna take like a year to a year and a half before we can actually pull money out of the company. But he didn't hear that. He just thought, oh, we made 1,800. Let's take it out. I'm like, bro, it doesn't work like that. Like, that's not actually fucking profit. But that's also my fault. Like, I wasn't clear on that. I didn't have that conversation with him ahead of time. And I thought, I didn't articulate it because I thought it was so obvious to me, but I didn't realize it wasn't obvious to him. So even just having these conversations that should seem obvious, man, it's so important to just speak up about it and be like, hey, by the way, if I'd had a conversation with him earlier, be like, hey, once this launches, we'll probably make about $2 grand. You can understand that's not actually profit. Mm-hmm. That has to go to paying me back for the 20 grand I put in first. Once we're actually profitable, then we can start splitting the profits. And if he's not okay with that, I need to know that then, right? Because then we can also do like, okay, well, we don't need to pay off the 20 grand right away. Maybe I can get paid off on the 20 grand for the next year. So we can allocate, say we have $1,000 out of that, you know, $1,800 profit, $1,000 profit. He gets 600, I get 400. But say maybe instead of that $1,000, we put 20% towards the 20 grand in debt. So then we're splitting $800. So, but without having that conversation, man, it really blew up the relationship.
Yeah.
And I was like, shit, dude, that sucks. Because it could have been really cool, but I didn't have the right conversations. And well, now I'm imparting this valuable lesson to everybody on fucking YouTube.
Man, that's really good. I love this topic because it clarifies a lot of things for me and my side. And I know he's going to listen to this. And it just helps, especially you just have to be on the same page, same vision, same thing.
Exactly.
And map it out.
Yeah, exactly, dude. Yeah. Just having conversations and like open and honest and telling people what you want and trying to create the business. Because ultimately you build the business because you want to have a better life. You want to have a life that you actually enjoy doing what you do, whether that's money or time or whatever. So you have to be on the same page with that. But yeah, it really just comes down to conversations. It's surprising how many times I've fucked that up, to be honest. Thank God I'm a lot better at it now. But who knows? I'll fuck something up next week. And then a year from now, the podcast will be like, man, remember that time I said this? Man, I was wrong.
What's today's date? Thursday, May 5th. Oh, Cinco de Mayo.
Oh, all right. Yeah.
We got a year from now. We'll see how that goes.
All right. Cool, man. Well, dude, I think we covered a lot here. I'm sure there's going to be things that I'm like, oh, I should have said this or whatever. And you guys listening that do have experience with this, there's a lot that we missed. We're just kind of, all these topics, we're just kind of glossing over the surface and giving like, in a half hour or 40 minutes, the down and dirty, like the best conversation we can have with the most information for you guys. We're absolutely going to miss stuff. And also it's very important if you guys are listening to this, take everything we say with a grain of salt. This is only stuff that works for our situation, our experience. You cannot take our templates and apply it directly to your life and your business and your experience. You're going to have to take the principles of it and modify it and change it so that it fits your life and your business. So these aren't, we don't have the answers for you. We just have hopefully some good questions that you can ask yourself to find the answers for yourself.
Exactly. Well said. Disclaimer.
There we go.
All right. If you guys are watching on YouTube or wherever, make sure you subscribe, like, comment, share. You know what to do.
All right, man. Shake and bake.
Shake and bake.